Your mind, particularly.
السلام عليكم.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء، واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم، ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، إن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله، وأحسن الهدي هدي محمد، وشر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Assalamu alaikum, my dear brothers and sisters, inshallah. Today's topic is going to be about Surah Al-Asr. And Surah Al-Asr, the central message of Surah Al-Asr is about time. And so, inshallah, we're going to spend some time talking about time. And the reason I think this is an appropriate topic and a relevant topic to talk about right now is the weather is getting a little bit colder. So much of what we were doing with our time over the last few months, we were spending it outside. Now we're not going to be able to do as much outside. In addition, for the last few months, and it seems for the foreseeable future, many of us that are in jobs that we don't have to be physically in a place for, so if we aren't doctors, we happen to be in technology, doing other kinds of services or knowledge work, there's a good chance that we are working from home. Because we're working from home, we end up with a little bit extra time because we're no longer having to commute, we no longer have to spend as much time preparing for work. I can't tell you the last time I ironed any clothes or polished any of my shoes. I don't have to do that anymore, but I do still wear pants to work every day. But we do have more time. And then, of course, because of the pandemic, a lot of the activities that we were engaged in or kids were engaged in have been canceled, or they've been changed, or they've been moved to virtual. And so in some ways, we have been given the gift of a little bit extra time. And how are we going to use that time? That will be the topic of our discussion. The one thing I do want to remind everyone to do is, in the next month, I would like all of us to at least take 5 or 10 minutes of our time and make sure that we vote. So if you have not gotten a ballot yet, you can go to vote.org. It'll tell you exactly what you can do to get your ballot, and it'll tell you exactly where you can go to put in your vote. You can choose whether you want to do it in person or to do a ballot like the one that I have here. I have voted, I just need to put it in the mail, inshallah. That would be a good use of all of our time for at least sometime in the next month, inshallah. The site I mentioned is vote.org. Many of the scholars got together and talked about the importance of voting and is there any issue with voting, and they point to the concept in the Sharia of the greater good. And even if there isn't one particular candidate that you think is perfect, that doesn't mean we wait for the perfect candidate before we vote for someone. We should vote for the candidate that is going to be better rather than the candidate that is going to be worse for us, inshallah. And so for today's discussion, inshallah, we'll spend some time talking about why we should worry about and why we should guard our time. We'll then talk about what happens when we don't make good use of our time. And then the question that all of us are trying to answer is, how do we know? How do we know whether we are in fact making good use of our time? The decisions that we're making, the items we're choosing to spend time on, how do we know if we're making those right decisions? And then inshallah we'll talk about what are some of the things that we can do to actually make the best use of our time, inshallah. Imam Shafi'i said, if this surah, Surah Al-Asr, would have only been revealed and nothing else in the entire Quran, he said, then this was enough for guidance and for righteousness. My dear brothers and sisters, this 103rd surah in the Quran is very short. It's among the shortest ones in the Quran, with just 3 ayahs. And for someone as learned and one of our scholars like Imam Shafi'i to say this would have been enough for guidance and righteousness, if nothing else, it at least gives us a clue that there must be lots and lots and lots of wisdom in this surah. And the topic of the surah is one that's also extremely important. And the surah, of course, starts off with Wal-Asr. Allah swears by Al-Asr, and Al-Asr is, of course, the midday prayer that we pray, inshallah, every day, but it also means the passage of time. And as is often the case in the Arabic language, words aren't just selected arbitrarily, they're selected for a reason. Al-Asr could have been called anything, but why was it called the passage of time? Why is it that word was chosen for the prayer that we pray in the midday? And the word asr is the same as the root word for asir. Asir means juice. And so when we think of juice, how do you get juice? You take fruit and you squeeze it and you get juice. And so when the reason Asr is called the passage of time, as if we need to act with sense of urgency because time is running out, time is passing, the juice is being squeezed out of the fruit. It's because if we think about the time of Asr, that's right as the day is ending. And while in our times, we have the luxury of modern amenities like light, and you could say we could do anything at night that we can do during the day because we can have light. But the reality is, if we even think about our own situations, even in the last month, as we've seen the hours of daylight go from going all the way until 9 o'clock at night and starting earlier in the morning to having fewer and fewer hours of daylight, it changes how we think. It changes what we're able to do. Before I would have more energy until later on at night. Now I feel like at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night, I want to go to sleep because I've had less hours of daylight. And so that's the reason that Surah Asr is called Asr. It's the passage of time because that's the time of the day when there's only a little bit of the day that's actually left and everything else is being squeezed out. There's many things that happen in each of our days and each of our weeks that likely remind us, they shake us, they jolt us, and remind us of the fragile nature of time. Maybe it's some difficult situation that we had at work, maybe it's at home, maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's a financial situation, maybe it's a health situation. And there's one of these that come to mind for me that just happened yesterday. I was on with a colleague of mine, and we were having a phone conversation just one-on-one, and we were talking about each other and catching each other up on how things had been going the last few months. And then she said this to me. She said, Omar, we just got some really good news. And I said, okay, are you having a baby? Are you getting a new pet? You know, what happened? That's typically what follows when someone said that. She said, my husband and I had gone to his oncologist, and I'd almost forgotten that her husband and her are not very old, they're middle-aged, or even younger than middle-aged, and she said they had gotten news from their oncologist that he had been cancer-free for 3 years, and that this was a big deal because for the type of cancer her husband had, he was only among 5% of people to survive for 3 years after he had that cancer. And so the doctor's words to them was, I can say to you with confidence that your husband has many more years to live. And that was the first time they had any of that confidence. For the last 3 years since he had gotten cancer, every day they were living life as if time was being squeezed. And so the way that we use our time, when it's very clear to us we don't have much left, is very different than the way we use time if we think we have many more days, many more months, many more years of it. But the reality is, my dear brothers and sisters, none of us know. None of us know if today is going to be our last salah. None of us know if today is going to be our last Jum'ah. And so the Asr Salah and the name Asr and the Surah Asr is all to remind us of that and to remind us of that every single day. Because imagine if we behaved every single day as if this might be our last. How would we choose to spend that day? It would become very clear to us whether I should meet with this person or not meet with this person. Should I watch this TV show? Should I not watch this TV show? Should I have this discussion with my child, with my spouse? Should I not have this discussion? Should I read this book? Should I not read this book? Should I read the extra sunnah? Should I not read the extra sunnah? Should I make zikr? Should I not make zikr? Should I pay off my debt? Should I pray? Should I give my zakat? Should I call out to my neighbor? All of those decisions become very, very clear if we find ourselves in situations where we're finding that our time is being squeezed. And one of the scholars, Hassan al-Basri, he said the best parable that he found was that of the person selling ice. The person selling ice, what is their capital? Is just ice. And every single minute, what is happening to that ice? This is, of course, before the age of refrigerators and freezers. It's melting. That is the most worthy asset that he has, valuable asset that the ice seller has, and every single minute, it's melting. And so, my dear brothers and sisters, that is what That is what Hassan al-Basri has said to us, is our capital is time. And Allah reminds us, if we waste our capital solely for the dunya, then as the surah says, we could end up in khusr. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. Swears by the passage of time, verily, insan, human beings, are in tremendous loss. Just like the ice seller, if he doesn't do something with that ice, then all he is doing is he's losing. What happens when we don't make good use of our time? There's a hadith where Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu reported the Prophet ﷺ said there's two blessings that many people lose. And those two blessings are health and free time. If you think about our lives and the canvas of our life, that is what makes up our life. If we don't have free time, if we don't have good health, what can we paint on our life, on our canvas of life? Nothing. And so, my dear brothers and sisters, for those of us that have that free time, for those of us that have that health, we should know that that is one of the biggest blessings from Allah, because those two are prerequisites to doing anything else, to having better relationships, to being happier, to traveling, to building a business, to whatever it is that we want to do, a worldly pursuit, an investment for the akhirah. Chances are we need those two things to be successful. There's a very important hadith, and this is one of the hadith that the scholars consider to be a core hadith of Islam, and it is narrated by Ibn Abbas. It says the Prophet ﷺ said, take advantage of 5 matters before 5 other matters. Your youth before you become old, your health before you fall sick, your wealth before you become poor, your free time before you become preoccupied, and your life before your death. And so if we think about this hadith, across which each of those 5 pairs of items run is time. We know we're all going to become old. We know we're all going to become unhealthy. We know we're all going to become busier. Right? Life does not, for most of our lives, we're going to be busier and busier every subsequent year. We have more responsibilities, more problems. We can rely less on our parents or our grandparents and uncles because we're the ones that are becoming the parents and the uncles and the grandparents, and we have to take on a lot of those responsibilities. So much of it is about time. How do we know if we're making good use of our time? Time is one of those items, it's one of those assets that democratizes all of us. It doesn't matter if I'm poor or rich, what country I was born in, the color of my passport, the amount on my paycheck, who I work for, what my house looks like, it doesn't matter. Every single one of us gets exactly 168 hours every single week. The question then becomes, how do we use that time? How often do we say, I don't have time? And the reality is, my dear brothers and sisters, we all have 168 hours. So no one can really say, I don't have time, because we all have exactly that much time. But when we decide to say we don't have that much time, what we're really saying is, that is not important enough to me for me to use any one of the 168 hours of my week. People will give up sleep. Some people will give up television. Some people may give up eating out. Some people may give up reading or learning, whatever it is, but we use our time for something, and we're always making trade-offs. What makes it into the 168 hours versus what does not make it into the 168 hours. And so it is about prioritizing. The time management experts, and I look at many of our scholars, mashallah, and we'll take a few minutes and talk about their amazing, amazing levels of productivity. What they are able to do is they are able to make it appear like they are magicians with time. They are able to multiply time. Scientists and the physicists will tell us that is not possible. You can't multiply time. Everyone has the same amount of hours. How is it that some people get months worth of work done in a week and some people only get a day's worth of work done in an entire week? It is the ability to multiply time. It is the ability to use your time as an investment versus as an expenditure. So if I invest, what happens? It grows over time. So if I make a financial investment in a real estate property in 20 years, I do nothing and all of a sudden it's worth more. It's the same thing with time. If we spend our time in ways that it returns an investment versus in ways that it's not returning an investment, that can make all the difference. If we use our time to learn and get smarter at doing things, the next time I need to do something that takes me 6 hours, I can now do it in 4. And the next time in 2 and in 1 and so on. And that's what we'll see many of the scholars and others were able to do. What's also important when it comes to how we use our time is to just focus on ourselves. This is one of those situations where we should be very, very selfish, or we should focus on those that we have responsibility for. So I've got responsibility for my family, I've got responsibility for my children, I have to teach them, I have to educate them. I should feel responsible for them, but I shouldn't judge anybody else, because I have no idea. I may say, well, that brother spends a lot of time watching movies. I shouldn't say that. I don't know what good is going to come from it. There may be some hikmah in it. Maybe there's a reason he's doing it. Maybe because of that, he becomes more empathetic and he helps more homeless people in the city. Well, in that case, watching movies was a really good thing for him to do. If I see someone that's spending a lot of time shopping, I don't know, maybe that person is shopping for their friends or their family or their neighbors or someone else. I don't know. And we should be reminded of the surah, the story of Khutba, where Prophet Musa was following him around and asked him the 3 questions, and Khidr sunk a ship, and Khidr killed a man, and so on. And Prophet Musa was saying, what is wrong? What is wrong? Why are you doing this? It turns out there was hikmah, there was goodness in all of that, but even Prophet Musa, being a prophet, did not know. And so we should be careful. We shouldn't judge others on how they use their time. We should turn the focus inward to ourselves, hold ourselves accountable, and be judging ourselves and becoming better and better users of time. Last year, I was in the process of buying a car, and I couldn't make up my mind, and I was looking at different cars, and I remember this one sentence that I heard from my 6-year-old or 5-year-old at the time, and it reminded me of how poorly I was using my time. When your 5-year-old says to you, come on, Baba, I am sick of you talking about cars, can you buy one already? At that point, you should know you're spending way too much time on something, right? But so we need to have that humility. We should focus on ourselves and be selfish when it comes to improving how we use our time, because it is like that asi, it is like the juice from the fruit, it is being squeezed out every single minute. And so the final question that we said we would answer today, inshallah, is how can we make the best use of our time? And subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us that answer. That is the last verse of Surah Al-Asr. And in the last verse of Surah Al-Asr, second verse, Allah said, all of mankind is in tremendous loss. And so we think, okay, wow, this is very fatalistic, we're in trouble, we should stop. But alhamdulillah, there is a third verse where Allah says, accept. So there is an opportunity, inshallah, not to be among the people that experience that tremendous loss. And those are the people Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. So that's very clear. These are the 4 things we need to do. If we do these 4 things, if these are the things that guide us when it comes to how we use our time, we won't be among those that are in tremendous loss, and we will, inshallah, be among those that are successful. And those 4 things it starts with belief. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. So you have to have belief, you have to have the right intention, and it starts with what is in our heart, because that fuels everything. And then and do righteous good deeds. So if we have good thoughts, but we don't actually actuate them. We don't turn that potential energy of our heart into some kinetic energy, some action, some behavior, then we're probably not going to be among those that aren't in tremendous loss. So we have to do righteous deeds, and then it is those وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ, those that enjoin in truth, those that encourage others towards the truth. And a lot of that is by simply being good role models for the truth, and then join others in patience, which is sabr. There's in Tirmidhi, there is a hadith that says the superiority of the scholar over the worshipper is like the superiority of the moon over the rest of the celestial bodies. So at night, we see a whole sky filled with little dots, but there's only one very, very big circle. That is the moon, and that is the maqam, the station of the scholars. Indeed, the scholars are the heirs of the prophets, and the prophets do not leave behind dinar or dirham. The only legacy of the scholars is knowledge. So whoever takes from it, then he has indeed taken the most able share. I'll share with you some of what our scholars are able to do, the level of productivity, mashallah, that these individuals had. I don't even know how they could have possibly done it. The work that some of these scholars did, you would think would require an entire organization to complete, yet they figured out how to complete this in their own lifetime, largely as solitary effort. Ibn Ma'in wrote 1 million hadith by hand. 1 million hadith written by hand. Ibn Jarir wrote hundreds of volumes of text and scholarly work, again, by hand. Al-Maqdisi would pray 300 rakahs before Zuhr every day. Ibn Taymiyyah, who was born in 661, and he died at the age of 57. So at the time, that was considered a very long age, long life, and he died at an old age, but for these times, we wouldn't consider 57 to be very old. At the age of 57, when he died, he had written 500 volumes. My dear brothers and sisters, we should seek inspiration from our scholars. They are the best amongst us, and we should look at how they are able to use their time, because they are certainly exemplars for us. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام. Sheikh Abdul Fattah al-Khutba, who's one of the contemporary scholars, this is what he says on the topic. Is your life in this universe anything other than the time which passes between birth and death? Gold can vanish, but you may acquire many times what you lose, but you cannot return lost time that has passed. Therefore, time is more precious than gold and dearer than diamond, or any precious stone, or any profit, for it is life itself. It's reported that whenever any two companions of the Prophet ﷺ would meet each other, they never separated without doing two things. One is they would greet each other with the salam upon meeting each other and upon separating from each other. And the second is that they would recite Surah Al-Asr. All the surahs of all the du'as of all the things that the companions could do, why is it this one surah they would say when they were in their presence, each other's presence, every single time? There must be some wisdom in it. There must be some reminder in these three short ayats that is a gem for all of us to, inshallah, learn from and to inshallah reflect upon and to gain from. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا. ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا. ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا ربنا لا تحمل علينا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به. واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. Ya Allah, make us among those that reflect and make the best use of our own free time. Ya Allah, make us among those that do not judge others for how they spend their free time. Ya Allah, make us among those that believe. Ya Allah, make us among those that do righteous deeds. Oh Allah, make us among those that encourage others in truth. Oh Allah, make us among those that encourage others in patience. Oh Allah, make us among those at the day of judgment that do not regret how we spent our time. Oh Allah, make us among those that enter paradise with ease. عباد الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى والفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله يذكركم واشكروه يزدكم واتقوه يجعل لكم مخرجا وأقم الصلاة.
وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
Inshallah, if I said anything that was incorrect or that was offensive, that was my mistake, and I ask for your forgiveness and that of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if there's anything that was a benefit, it came from Allah, the source of all that's good. Please straighten your lines and please do not stand shoulder to shoulder. Allahu Akbar. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. والتين والزيتون وطور سينين وهذا البلد الأمين لقد خلقنا الإنسان في أحسن تقويم رددناه أسفل سافلين إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات فلهم أجر غير ممنون. فما يكذبك بعد بالدين أليس الله بأحكم الحاكمين. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. والعصر إن الإنسان في خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.